We're back, and we're working on the acoustic guitar again. The goal for this video is to close the box, which means really we're just going to glue on the back and the top. But it's not as easy as that. We got a lot of things to do in between there, so stick around. Welcome back to the workshop, everyone, where, as I already said, we are working on the acoustic guitar today. My goal is to get that box closed. We got to get busy, so let's not waste any time and jump right in. I'm going to begin by working on the back, but before I do any of the work in fitting everything to the body, I need to install my label. I want to install that now because, well, it's really a lot easier to get to everything. You don't have to work around the rim. It's not really all that hard, but I want to do that now so that it's done and out of the way. And since I didn't really show how I made my label in the first acoustic guitar build, I want to cover that now. So here's my label. This is just some standard linen parchment paper. You can pick this up all over. There's nothing special about this paper. Here's my label that I've designed and printed out. Now when I printed this, I made sure to print it on a laser printer, not an inkjet printer. If you print it using an inkjet printer, any moisture can loosen that ink and cause it to smear around. So I think it's important to use a laser printer. That way nothing gets smudged later on. This label is going to get glued on right here. But before we do that, I'm going to use some shellac in a spray can and just lightly mist on a coat or two on the top of this label, kind of to help protect it and give it just a teeny bit more of an aged look. Now you don't want to get too carried away here, just light coats. If you go too heavy, it could cause the paper to wrinkle and get soggy, and well, then you'd have to start over. Nice and easy is the name of the game. Whoa, that's enough.
Once the shellac is completely dried, I'm just going to use regular old wood glue in a very light coat to glue the label to the back plate. When I stick the label in place, I'm just aligning it by eye, trying to make sure it's centered on the reinforcing strip. After working out any air bubbles with my fingers, I'm going to switch to a small scrap of wood to flatten out the rest of the label.
There it is.
Now I'll once again lay out a center line on the neck and the tail blocks to help me align the back plate. With the center line marked out, now I can align the back plate on my center lines and lightly clamp it in place. To help clamp it in place, I've got some threaded inserts that I've installed into my mold, and I made up these little scrap wood clamping blocks to hold the plate in place while I carefully align the glue joint on the back plate with my center lines. Once the back plate is perfectly aligned where I want it to live, I'm going to use a pencil and mark out the locations of the braces onto the sides of the rim. This is marking out the location of where I need to cut away some material and cut some little reliefs for the brace to sit into. I'm going to do this all the way around and mark out all 8 locations.
Now I'm going to very carefully flip this over, and I'll mark the area on the reinforcing strip where I need to remove some of that material.
The reinforcing strip needs to fit between the neck and the tail block. To remove that material, I'll just use a small razor saw and make a series of very small kerfs that I can easily chip away with a chisel. You'll notice I've got some painter's tape on there. That's just to protect the back plate while I'm working on removing this material.
With these areas cleaned up, now I'm going to set this aside for a little bit, and I'm going to work on cutting notches into the kerfing that'll accept the ends of these braces. This is kind of the fiddly part, where you cut, and you check, and you file, and you check, and you sand, and you check, until everything fits nicely.
Before I make any cuts, I'm going to draw some straight lines from pencil mark to pencil mark. That way I know exactly the direction that I need to make my cuts. I'm basically drawing out the location of the brace onto the kerfed lining. To mark my depth, I'm using a 3D printed model of my brace end to mark the depth that I need to cut. With the exact location of my braces marked out, I'll use a small razor saw to make these cuts into the side down to the depth of my brace. Once I've made the initial cuts, I'll then make a series of small curves that I can then use a chisel to remove. I'm going to use an assortment of small files to clean up that notch. I want to make sure it's nice and smooth and the edges are clean. I think this step in the whole entire building process is right up there with one of the most tedious. It's really just kind of slow and careful work as you carefully file away the material and get the braces to fit in correctly. Now, if this was just one notch, it wouldn't be all that big a deal. But the back has 8 notches that we need to clean up, and they all have to fit as exact as you can make them. There's also a lot of test fitting as you go to check the progress.
As I'm fitting all of these little joints, a really good way to help see them is by putting some sort of a backlight inside there. The backlight shines out through any gaps and really lets you know where you need to make some adjustments. I'm just using this little rechargeable work light deal. Works really good. As I'm checking the fit, I'm using just minimal pressure from just a couple fingers. I want it to close up very lightly because if it takes too much pressure to close the gaps, then I know that when I clamp this in place with my bendy sticks, it's just not going to close up well. So I figure if I can close it with just pressure from a couple fingers, the sticks are going to close it up.
And there's still a little bit more filing to do. Like I said, this is kind of the tedious part.
And also, what's up with all the flies? I don't know what it is about this time of year. Do you guys get a bunch of flies in your shop? It's really annoying.
And now for hopefully one last final test fit.
Well, that's looking pretty good. I think now I'm ready to flip this whole contraption over and repeat all of this tedious process to fit the top. I could glue this back on now, but then I couldn't work much on the top because I'd be waiting for glue to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and get both the top and the back fit, then we'll work on gluing things up. Plus, we got some brace carving to do yet.
Remember how I've mentioned before about a lot of repetitive tasks? Well, fitting the top is again just like fitting the back. I'll mark out the brace locations, remove the excess material with a razor saw and a chisel, and then I'll just carefully file and test fit until the braces fit into the notches. And after test fitting it about 100 times, I'll find out that I still need to file a little bit more.
Well, I think that wraps up the fit on all of the braces. Everything fits really nice. Now, I need to work on loosening up this top. The light's shining me in the eye. This top feels really stiff, and if I put it back in place and I gently press down on the bridge area, it flexes a little bit, but I think I want it to flex just a little bit more. Now, when I cut these braces, I intentionally cut them a little bit taller than what the plans call for, mainly because I felt like the top needed a little bit more bracing. Now I'm not thinking that that was necessary, and I probably would have been just fine going with the original height of the braces. What I want to do is remove a little bit of material and just put a slight scallop in these braces just to give it a little bit more flex. I don't want to take off too much because I don't think it needs a ton of movement, but I need to make it flex just a little bit more. So we're just going to carefully work some of this material out of the center of each of these X braces. Hopefully I don't go too far.
I'll begin cutting these scallops using some of my little homemade finger planes to work away the center of the brace.
These little tiny shavings are so cool. If you haven't seen the video where I made these little planes, I want to put a link down below in the description. I'm still working on a couple more. One with a curved bottom would make this really easy.
Since I can only get so far with the finger planes, once I've removed some of the material, I'll switch over to a chisel to scallop it out a little bit more. Throughout this entire process, I'm constantly stopping to check the tone of the top. I'm still working to build that ear and understanding the relationship to the braces and how it affects the tone of the top.
I'm trying to keep both of these the same, so as I'm shaping this little scallop, I'm trying to take some measurements as I go. It's not 100% accurate, but at least I can tell if they're close. Let's see if this flexes a little better. It actually does flex more. I think I like it right there. I'm just going to spend a few minutes now just resanding these braces and getting everything cleaned up.
Now you may have noticed that I only scalloped the lower portion of the X brace. I didn't really feel that I needed to put a scallop in the upper portion because my goal was really to get the bridge area to move just a little bit more. I've seen lots of builds where the builder has scalloped both sides of the X brace, but in this particular case, I didn't really feel that that was necessary. There's a lot of things in building an acoustic guitar that I feel that it really just takes experience to fully understand. You can read all the articles and blog posts and watch all the YouTube videos and even talk to friends, but there is just so much that goes into this. I really don't feel that you can get a good grasp on it until you have several builds under your belt. You just have to kind of experience it for yourself. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so let me know down in the comments.
I think now we're ready to begin the process of closing the box. I've got the Go Bar deck set up. I've done a 100% complete dry run, including working out all of my calls, all of my clamping sticks, just to make sure that nothing goes wrong. I'm gonna start with the back. That way I can clean out any squeeze out and maybe keep it a little bit more tidy when you're looking in through the sound hole. If I glue the top on first, then you really don't have any way to clean out any squeeze out on the back. Let's glue this.
I can definitely say this time around I was a lot less nervous of this step than I was on the first acoustic guitar. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that, well, I've already done this once, but I think doing a complete dry run and having your process down really takes a ton of the stress out of it. You'll see here that I have my backlight inside the body. I thought it might be helpful to leave the light in there while I clamped this up. That way I can really ensure that everything's closed up well and I have no gaps. I'm not too worried about the light because it is rechargeable, so I'll just recharge it if it dies. And at this point, since I have glue applied, it's time to pick up the pace. I need to get these clamped in place before that glue begins to set up.
I'm calling that glued.
After letting this dry for several hours, I feel that I can safely remove these sticks and begin working on the top.
Hey, look at that. My light's dead.
There wasn't nearly as much squeeze out as I thought there would be, and it was really easy to clean up with a little scraper.
Now I need to flip this entire contraption around and repeat that exact same process and glue on the top. This ought to be interesting. I'm impressed. I didn't even knock anything on the floor. And the second verse is the same as the first. Have you heard that before? Hopefully this one's not louder or worse. And as they say in showbiz, that's a wrap. The box is officially closed.
After letting this whole thing dry overnight, we can now remove it from the mold.
Well, check it out. The box is closed. Let's see what kind of sound it makes. Not that that really tells me anything yet, but well, I think we're going to wrap up this episode right here. We still have to route everything flush and also route the binding and purfling channels and get that installed. I hope to accomplish that in the next installment of this acoustic guitar build. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.